Hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of OPE. We are the Ohana Packers Edition podcast. I am Iowa Joe, and as you can see, Mike Kawano still has not returned. I think he got lost somewhere in Japan with his family. So we're hoping the best for him. Actually, no, he texted me earlier, said they're jet lagged and sick, so he's not going to make it tonight. But I have the next best thing, and that's Dan Kotnik from Game On Wisconsin and his mini adventures. So I'm not completely alone, and you don't have to deal with just me this week. So we're good on that. Dan, we just had a nice conversation before we started recording about both our favorite thing in the world, Star Wars. So I don't know how we can top that with this week's draft preview, but I guess we got to give it a go, huh?
We should try. We should probably try, unless people want a full breakdown of where we think the Thrawn storyline is headed into the movies and stuff like that. Like I'll be fine if we want to do that. I will say though, it is very on brand for Mike Kawano to not be here. Just like his Michigan Wolverines ducked the Buckeyes in 2020 and saved Jim Harbaugh's job, he's decided to duck me today to talk about the best wide receiver in this draft, which does come from The Ohio State University.
Yeah, last week I had to deal with Westendorf and the whole Michigan thing, so I'm kind of glad I don't have to do. I haven't had to deal with other Michigan for the last 3 weeks or so, but. So
yeah, it's why I'm getting my pot shots off now because Mike isn't here to defend himself.
That's how we do it. And I have to say, we are recording on kind of a sad day for Iowa fans too, because they did not pull off the women's national championship. I've said this all along. I'm not a big basketball person, but obviously I do know who Caitlin Clark is. I do know how far they progressed into the season and all that, but it sounded like they went up against a pretty good South Carolina team. So
that South Carolina team this year was an absolute juggernaut. I followed it a little bit more this year with obviously the Caitlin Clark storyline. I was rooting for Iowa today.
That's why it happened.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that was just an absolute. I think Iowa put up an amazing fight considering, I think, the overall talent disparity between both rosters. But that South Carolina team is just unstoppable.
I do have to give props to the South Carolina coach, and forgive me, I'm not sure what her name is because, like I
Dawn
said,
Staley.
I don't follow. Yeah, because I guess she and the press conference or whatever they were doing there when they were giving out the trophies and everything, that she was really talking up Caitlin Clark and how she's made a big difference to women's basketball overall, and she'll do to the WNBA what she did with women's basketball in college. That she'll just bring it to another level, and that's just great to hear the camaraderie there with them. And it's I don't want to say it's rare to see that with teams, because usually you get the ones out there that are, we whipped their ass and we don't want to, but she at least took the time to, give props and everything. So it from what I understand, it was a good game for what it was. Again, I'm not, even when I was in college doing my journalism courses, I went to the basketball games, I covered them, but I couldn't get into basketball itself. So, but
you're more of a football guy with the 10-3 scores and punts and everything, right?
Well, and I like baseball too, so I like the 1-0s and the So I can follow them a little bit easier, I guess.
Sure.
But so I mean, it is what it is. But she's gonna be something else. I know if she was in a bigger school. Well, I don't want to say bigger school because Iowa is a relatively big school. But if she was in a bigger market, she'd be making complete bank with the NIL money. I mean, she already is with what she's getting, but
a more traditional powerhouse team market. Yeah, like a UConn or a Baylor or something like that. Yeah.
Right. Or even if she was down at LSU with like Angel Reese and all that, then, she would just be.
Could you imagine?
Could you imagine the team if they were on? So, yeah. But I mean, it is what it is, but that's not what we're here for. We're here for football. We're here for the Green Bay Packers.
Oh
We're
no,
here
5 minutes in, we've talked Star Wars and women's college basketball. I'm loving the way this trends so far.
Well, hey, and the Braves just swept the Diamondbacks this week, so I'm good. That happened today. Unfortunately, Spencer Strider's going on the IL with the UCL issue. They're not sure if it's a tear or whatever, but I could go on for hours on that shit. But but I suppose that being that we are the Packers podcast, we better get on to some Packer stuff, which leads us to the topic for today, which is the wide receivers / tight ends for the Green Bay Packers. We all know the situation the Packers are in right now, that there is a ton of young talent on the team. We've seen some growth from the last 2 years. We've seen 2 different quarterbacks playing with this young talent and how big a difference it was between the two. I'm not going to drag up the issue with Aaron Rodgers again because it's done, said, over with. Jordan Love using what he's got, showing what these players have. This isn't really a big need for this team, but I'm of the opinion, and I don't know if you share the same thing, Dan, or not, but I'm the opinion that the Packers need to go back to how they were doing things years ago with the wide receivers and keep drafting one every year so you can just keep refilling that coffer. Because who knows what's going to happen with Christian Watson? Who knows what's going to happen with Romeo Doubs in that situation? So what do you feel about that, Dan, while I pull up the roster here real quick?
No, I think that's absolutely spot on. Like, I was literally thinking about, like, go back to the 2011 draft when they took Randall Cobb in the second or third round. I think it was the second round.
Yeah.
That team that's coming off of a Super Bowl, you have Jordy Nelson. I think Donald Driver retired after that season, right? That was his last.
No.
Or did he do one more?
He went on one more, I believe.
Okay. I mean, you still had. Now I'm trying to remember. You had Greg Jennings, you had James Jones. Like, you had players, like you had a team, like you had an offense that just went out and beat one of the best defenses in the Super Bowl. And they spend high draft picks on a wide receiver in Randall Cobb. And Randall Cobb turns out to be an amazing player. And I think the Packers are in a similar situation where
he played 2 more years.
He played
2011. Yeah, 2011 and 2012.
Wow. Okay. I think I remembered the Dancing with the Stars as like his swan song.
I think we kind of had hope because we could tell that he was kind of
right. But like, my opinion of the current roster is like, this last year was a lot of fun to see all these different young wide receivers step up and make plays, and every month it's a new guy leading the team and receiving or whatever. But like, I'm of the opinion that, like, this is a team where, like, you don't necessarily get to sit back and just say we're good with this.
Right.
Like pretty much everybody on that offense, like, is kind of replaceable. If you find a deep, like, I think everyone outside of like maybe 2 or 3 wide receivers could be replaceable. A lot of, I mean, look at the center, Josh Myers, my guy. He can be replaceable. We already saw Aaron Jones easily replaceable, apparently.
Yeah.
Like, just because everybody was great and it was a lot of fun last year and all these young wide receivers stepped up doesn't mean they're going to do it again. It doesn't mean that Dontavian Wicks is going to be the guy. It doesn't mean Bo Melton is going to be a guy moving forward, And so I think on top of that, this is a really fun wide receiver class. And it'd be very tempting to not pull the if a guy falls to you in a second round, a third round position, it's hard to pass up on that with the situation.
Well, not only is it a fun class, but it's such a deep class.
Yeah.
Because obviously with us doing week by week, it's hard to scout or look at all the ones that you want to look at. So I'm very limited on what I've got. But also when you look at it, there's so many guys that meet the thresholds that the Packers look at that it's hard to believe that they wouldn't come out with one guy out of this draft. But I could, like I said, I completely agree that a lot of these guys are replaceable. I mean, again, did they figure out Christian Watson's hamstrings? Are they going to be able to keep him on the field more often? Romeo Doubs, it looked like he was starting to have his coming out the last few weeks of the season, including the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Is he going to continue building on that? Jaden Reed looked good, but is he going to be able to take that next step? And is he going to be able to stay healthy? Because that's one of the big things. And that's like one of the guys that I was watching earlier. They're relatively small they got good height, but they're really thin. Are they going to be able to hold up? Now, it looked like he was doing well for the most part. I mean, he did have some issues here or there. Bo Melton, is he going to be able to go on and do what he did? Wicks, same way, but he was having he had a hamstring issue, didn't he?
Yeah.
Was it a hamstring or was it a groin? I can't remember.
That might have been a groin, actually.
So, but I mean, and obviously the Packers have a whole new strength and conditioning group that they'll be able to help out a little bit more. They did send both Stokes and Watson to Madison to work with some specialists down there. So the hope is that they'll be able to stay on the field more. But again, some of the best wide receiving cores the Green Bay Packers have had have come because every year they're just draft and develop, and develop, draft and develop. Doesn't matter if we have 5 top guys, we draft another one and bring them in.
Yeah.
So
because you don't want to get to a situation where what was the I can't remember the names now. It was it Jamar? So, there was the year they picked like 2 wide receivers, and I was like, these are going to be the next guys, and they were gone within a year. It was like
you had the year that they took the 3 of them. It was Jamon Moore.
That's
everybody's favorite Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Equinemius St. Brown.
And everyone was like, one of these guys has to be it. You're not always going to get lucky and find a wide receiver draft class with Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks. I know Bo Melton's not a rookie, but like to have Bo Melton fall into your lap. No, I totally agree with you. And I think another kind of point on that, when you brought up the athletic profile that like a lot of these wide receivers fit, like it's a very deep class when you look at it from that standpoint. Conversely, on the other side, if you're looking at like some of the biggest needs for the Packers, it's safety and cornerback. And a lot of those guys do not fit what the Packers want athletically. And so if they get to a point where if it's between their 9th, 10th, 11th wide receiver on their draft board in round 3 or round 2, and he has an athletic profile that fits better than maybe the 5th or 6th safety or cornerback out there, I have a feeling they lean more towards their athletic profile and say this is a guy that we would prefer to have a safety at this point here, but nobody here fits what we want. They're not going to reach for a bad safety when a good wide receiver is sitting there.
Right. And, Goody, we questioned some of the stuff that he does during the draft the last few years, but a lot of it has seemed to work out in ways that we never would have thought happened. Mm-hmm. Jordan Love, I don't know if there's many people that can actually claim that they were all in on the Jordan Love pick when it happened. I've been completely honest when I say this, that I understand taking the quarterback because of what we were seeing from Rodgers. I wasn't okay with how they went about taking the quarterback that they took, and I wasn't sold on Jordan Love. Yeah. So, because I was, even back in the day, and this is another thing that I can't just say, whip out receipts and say, yeah, this is, but I was happy they took Aaron Rodgers back in the day. So, I mean, I understand the thought process of taking that when it happens. The same thing with a lot of the other ones. Well, why do you take A.J. Dillon when you've got Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones still on the roster?
Yep.
Why do you do this? Why do you do that? It's because they're planning It's the old
Rashawn
chess
Gary.
game. Yeah, they're playing the chess game. They're 10 moves ahead while you're still back here playing checkers.
Right.
So, it is what it is. But let's go ahead and see what they have on roster already for wide receivers. So we do know they have Dobbs, they have Watson, they have Wicks, they have Reed, they have Melton. They've also got Samori Toure, Malik Heath, Grant DeBose, and Thyrick Pitts. I hope that's how they pronounce their name. But he's a first-year player out of Delaware. So I imagine that was just a last-minute practice squad ad to just make sure they had somebody, because they were dealing with a little bit of injuries there in the playoffs. So they weren't sure how things were going. But you got Samori Toure, had hopes for him when he was drafted, and they just kind of went out the window. And I do like Heath. I really hope he's able to stick it out somehow, some way. DeBose, I know he was always one of those that he had high potential, but he was extremely raw. And I don't see him beating out the guys that they've already have at this moment.
Yeah.
And I don't know if, let's say, I don't know, pick whatever wide receiver you want, drops to Packers on their second round pick. Is he going to be able to outplay that guy for a roster spot?
Right.
So,
and then I think that's exactly the point with that, is like everyone talks about those the first 4 or 5 guys that you mentioned, but once you get past that, it's like, well, if somebody goes down, and then inevitably they will, Christian Watson or Romeo Dobbs, like, would you rather be relying on Grant DuBose or Malik Heath, or if you hit on a guy like this, you've upgraded your depth, and that's huge in this kind of offense.
And let's throw it out there. And I don't know how true they are, because the internet, you're only supposed to believe like a quarter of what's on the internet, and even then it's iffy on whether to believe it or not. But there have been rumblings that Watson could be on the trade block.
Oh, definitely,
now, whether or not that's true or not, who knows? Well, if that's the case, then obviously you're going to want to bring somebody else in to fill that spot and have them compete with, the rest of the guys on the roster. I want to put this disclaimer out there. I'm not advocating to trade Christian Watson. I'm just saying there have been some rumblings from some people out there saying that they've heard this and they've heard that, and that he could possibly be.
Even last year, there was that report out there that they, the Packers weren't looking to do it, but the Colts were asking for Christian Watson for a Jonathan Taylor trade. And so if you get another wide receiver here, like, it just gives you the flexibility, because if the best offer comes along and they say, we'll give you him, but we want Christian Watson, you feel a little bit better now parting with him if you have somebody else. There's a lot of Christian Watson-esque guys in this draft too.
And let's face it, we don't know what the defense is going to do this year. So if we can score 1 million points in a game and not have to put the pressure on the defense then while they're still learning the system, then it's better to have more playmakers on offense and let your defense figure itself out.
And two, if it's a single high safety defense, it gives up more big plays. You get into probably more shootouts with this style of defense. So there probably will be more pressure on this team, on this offense this year, to score more points and to score more points quickly.
And like I said earlier, this is a slash episode, so it's wide receiver / tight end. So we might as well throw out what's on the roster currently for tight ends. Mm-hmm. We know the 2 big guys, Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave. We know they're not going anywhere.
Right.
Then you've got Ben Sims, who I kind of like as a player. He's looking at 3rd tight end. And then you got the bane of my existence, Tyler Davis, and then Joel Wilson out of Central Michigan, which again probably is a practice squad guy that is just hanging around through camp and whatever.
Yeah.
I am completely shocked they decided to re-sign Tyler Davis. I know they keep saying it's for the special teams. I don't think he gives you any better special teams than what anybody else does. So I'm not sold on him. I think we're pretty much set at the top three tight ends unless somebody again falls. If Bauer out of Georgia somehow tumbles all the way down to 41, do you not say, okay, we're gonna go for it?
Right. No, I completely agree. I think when I was looking at where the Packers kind of tight end room fits, I think if you're looking anywhere, you're looking away from guys like Luke Musgrave and you're looking a little closer to Tucker Kraft, but I still think you're not even looking for that. I think you're looking for a Josiah DeGuara type, but actually somebody who could stay
Who
on the
could do
field
their
and
job?
play
Yeah.
and do their job. But you're looking more for that kind of hybrid H-back style tight end, a guy that can kind of fit into any package. And if you need him to catch one or two balls, he can do it, but he's closer to a fullback than he is a tight end.
Or you could go the other way and say you could be looking for another Mercedes Lewis who kind of does the same thing where he's going to go out there and be basically your sixth lineman. And if he has to catch a pass or two, he's going to be able to do it. So either way, I think that works. And then play special teams, of course. Once you get past the top two guys, they're basically going to be special teams players.
Yeah.
Again, I'm kind of big on Ben Sims just because I liked what I saw out of him last year pre-draft. And to get him as an undrafted and for him to step up kind of the way he did as that third tight end, and then kind of sub second tight end when Musgrave went down with the lacerated kidney. So, I think, like I said, we're set there, but it doesn't stop them from if somebody they like falls to them. Obviously, if Bauer falls down to, the second, 41 or 58 or whatever one it is, then we know there's some kind of issue outside of his play on the field. So chances are he's not a Packer anyway.
My mouth is watering at the idea of running a 3 tight end set with Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft, and Rob Bell.
Okay, so I got to go into anecdote for this.
Okay.
So back in the day, I was a moderator on a sports forum. It was called Pro Sports Daily. They just shut down a couple years ago, but every once in a while we would have this one random guy come into the Packers forum, and he put out there the Gravedigger play. And what it was is he had, at the time, it was whatever tight ends were on the team, and then BJ Raji as the fullback, and, kind of like that. So there was no wide receivers. It was just all tight ends, BJ Raji as fullback, and then you had, I think, Aaron Jones at the time, or maybe it wasn't Jones, it was Ryan Grant
or James Starks,
yeah, something like that as the running back, and they just called it the Gravedigger. And I could see that I could go with that for a 4 tight end set, and yeah.
I think you run like a T formation or something, or wishbone. That's what I want. I want to do that.
So, but yeah, like I said, let's face it. If he falls, there's more to him than just on the field stuff.
Definitely.
So he's probably not a Packer anyway. So really, when we're looking for tight ends, it's probably going to be day 3 stuff where, okay, we've got an extra 5th round. This guy fits what we're looking for. He's played a little special teams. All right, we're gonna throw the pick at him. Maybe we can use him as the DeGuara H-back type who can play both fullback and wide out or whatever you need him to do. So really, this is an easy episode for us, Dan, because we're just throwing names out there, and it doesn't matter if they take them or not. We're just, because it's not as huge of need as, like you said, a safety or a linebacker or in that realm. So,
right. It's funny, before we get further into this, I was scrolling through my notes, and I kind of I tried to break out like category, like looking at everybody in like categories of like, they kind of fit this profile. This is here. And I have as I started my tight end group, I have a category that says, quote, Aaron Rodgers. And it's only Brock Bowers. And it's exactly because of what you said, where it's like, it'd be a really cool talent to have on here, but it's going to take an Aaron Rodgers-esque fall down the draft board to get Brock Bowers on this team.
And, it could in a way, but really you'd have to hope he was the next Gronk, or he was the next Hawkinson, or he was the next.
He can't be another Tucker Kraft. Like, I love Tucker Kraft, but like this needs to be a transcendent player.
Otherwise, I could see him going in the second, but it's going to be a high second. It's not going to be, but, more towards the end of the first. Or, I know we all laughed at him last year when they did it. The Lions taking Gibbs early and taking Jack Campbell early. You're going to get a team that maybe does that, and then we laugh at him, and then after the year's over, we're not laughing at him anymore.
Right.
So, but it is what it is. So, Dan, I'm going to let you go ahead. I've been letting the guests have the first say on everything, so let's have you go ahead and throw out your first name here while I pull up my RAS calculator.
Marvin Harrison Jr., please. Marvin Harrison Jr. I want to talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. for another half hour, please. Thank you. No, I like Joe said, and I'm sure Mike would make sure to point out as well. I am a diehard Ohio State fan. And I've been really lucky to see some really great wide receiver talent come through. Really since I mean, you can go back to like kind of the start of the Urban Meyer era. Like, there have been a lot of really great wide receiver talent that's come through, and there's still talent there. Like, it's just a pipeline. It's wide receivers and offensive linemen that Ohio State pumps out. And Marvin Harrison Jr. is maybe the best one that I've ever seen that I've watched come through. Because you had Chris Carter, back in the day, that's a Hall of Fame guy. But I think that's the level Marvin Harrison Jr. can be. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. can be a future Hall of Famer. He's got that skill set. He flows through the game. It doesn't even look like he's playing football. It feels like he's kind of doing. It almost kind of feels like if like you watch like one of those like weird, like a Disney Channel movie where it's like, how am I going to learn how to play football by, taking out the trash? And it's like, oh, by learning to take out the trash, I learned how to do all these moves. And so it's like, I'm not really playing football. I'm doing all these different moves. That's what Marvin Harrison Jr. looks like. It's like he's not trying to play football.
This is 2 weeks in a row that we've talked about Disney-esque films on the podcast. Last week, Westendorf and I had to explain to Joey Van Zumeren what a Saturday night Disney movie was.
Let's watch a Disney Channel movie.
Well, this is even the ones that they would do on ABC, where
sure.
They took some of the old school movies like The Computer Wore Tennis Shoes and The Miracle Worker, and they redid them and put them on Saturday night movies.
Yeah.
So this is week 2 of Disney Channel or Disney movies.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
But maybe more like a Karate Kid, like, it's like, oh, wax on, wax off. It's like, oh, he wasn't teaching me how to do all these chores. He was teaching me karate moves. That's what it feels like. Is Marvin Harrison Jr. is not doing football moves. He's doing something completely else, and everyone else is trying to just figure it out. He's so smooth. Everything comes so natural to him. He feels like he's reading the defense along with the quarterback. And he had an amazing season last year with Kyle McCord throwing him the football. That right there should tell you everything about this guy's talent, because Kyle McCord was not a good football player.
And then he had a good season the year before with all the talent that was ahead of him on the depth chart.
Exactly. So He was one when we were losing to the Raiders, like about halfway through the season. I was like, all right, tank season, baby. Let's get a top 10 pick. I want Marvin Harrison Jr. in green and gold. And then we started winning. I'm like, all right, I guess playoffs is all right. I'll take that over Marvin Harrison Jr. Just don't go to the Bears. But him, like Marvin Harrison Jr. is my absolute draft crush. Like I would do unspeakable things to get him, but he's so much fun to play. I can't wait to watch him in the NFL. But it's between him, like Malik Neighbors should also not be forgotten in the Marvin Harrison Jr. conversation. These two are both outstanding wide receiver products, and they're like my gold standard for NFL wide receiver prospects. Like these two guys are just made to be top 15 picks.
So Marvin Harrison Jr. was also the guy that I was rooting to take when the Packers were on their skid early in the season. Because I said, what better way to have it than, because I think there was a rumor back in the day that when his dad was leaving Indianapolis, or it could have been one of the contract years that he was in Indianapolis, that the Packers were trying to make a move for him. So it just felt like, okay, what better way to do it than we'll just bring his kid in. That'll be good.
Right.
That'll be good enough. But obviously, like you said, there's unless something happens, there's no way that the Packers are in the neighborhood to take him. I really didn't watch this year's stuff, but what I do remember is watching some of the other guys from last year, and Marvin Harrison Jr. was popping up in my face. It was just constant. And okay, I can't remember ones that came out last year. It wasn't Olave it was Jackson, Smith, and Jigba. Mm-hmm. And I remember trying to watch him, and it was just Marvin Harrison Jr. caught another one. Marvin Harrison Jr. is doing this. So it's hard not to recognize what he's able to do. And again, like you said, Ohio State has been recruiting the hell out of wide receivers, have been bringing in tremendous talent. I think you're feedbacking again.
Uh-oh, sorry.
You're all right. Sorry for anybody who's wearing headphones when they listen to this, if it comes off on them too. But anyway, he is probably wide receiver one. Now I do want to touch on Malik Neighbor, who you just talked to, kind of mentioned. Now I know this is the time of year where we're getting all kinds of draft rumors, whether any of it's true or not. But I guess there's some off the field stuff with him and like I said, these are all rumors. I don't know. It's just what I've been seeing, that there were some rumors on him about some off the field stuff that some teams were questioning, and it could see him slide a little bit. If it is, it is. If it's not, it's not. I didn't try to watch any of the top guys this year because, like you just said, unless there's some reason for them to fall all the way out of their spot, like an Aaron Rodgers type fall or whatever, we're probably not going to be seeing them. Even if the Packers traded half their draft picks to trade up, they're still probably not even in the realm to get them. So I did look at a couple of guys that maybe could be in the second round for the Packers to take. And at least one of them they've already had a top 30 visit with, and that's Jermaine Burton out of Alabama. So why I'm talking about him at the moment is you just got done talking about your Ohio State stud and Marvin Harrison Jr. What would you say are the top three schools for wide receivers right now? Ohio State, LSU, Alabama.
Yeah, easy.
They've been producing the hell out of wide receivers for the last umpteen years. So Jermaine Burton, loved him. I thought he had good speed. He was a solid hand catcher, decent route runner. But he was not polished. He's good, but he's not polished. He's got a good deception to him. I don't like throwing out player comps, but he showed a lot of like Devontae to him, where he had that little jump skip Devontae had. He had that grab it with the hands and pull it in type catch that Devontae had. He had a little bit of the moves to him like Devontae had. So again, I'm not calling him Devontae. I'm just saying he showed a little bit of what Devontae did. He was a willing blocker, which obviously the Packers just absolutely love their blocking wide receivers. He was an average size for wide receiver. Let me see if I can pull it up here real quick. I think it's like 6 foot, 190 pounds.
Yeah, 196 pounds.
Yeah. So, yeah, he was 6 foot, 196. RAS score of 909. Had some shiftiness to him. Went for 39 receptions, 798 yards, 8 touchdowns. He seemed to track the ball well. And the reason why I threw his stats out there, because I'm not usually a stats guy, is because you could tell he was getting frustrated with the lack of QB play down there. Because there would be times that he would run the right route. He'd be waiting for the quarterback to throw the ball, and the quarterback threw it another way. And you could just see him throw his head down and throw his arms up and shit like that. So I think had he been playing there under, and I don't even like saying this because I wasn't a Bryce Love fan, but or Bryce Young fan, if Bryce was there, he probably would have had better stats. If it was somebody more experienced down there, he probably would have had better stats. So I know the Packers have brought him in. I'm thinking he's probably more of a second round type guy. So that would be my guy that I liked out of. Well, I got another guy that's probably another one that's my guy, but Jermaine Burton is probably the guy that I'm liking right now.
Yeah, I love him. I think you're spot on with the Devontae kind of stuff. Where it just those are the kind of things like I think you go. I think at this point now we can even just say like we can almost stop saying Devontae. It's Jaden Reed. Like you know, it's a young guy who plays with kind of the movement and experience, the shiftiness of a guy that's been there for 4 years. That's exactly him. I will offer up one of my guys that if he's sitting around there in the third round, is a guy that I would be interested in looking at, and that's Xavier Leggett out of South Carolina.
Okay.
Mostly because like he came onto the scene so late. Like he really didn't. He's a redshirt senior, and he really didn't like kind of explode or get into the offense until like last year, really. But he came out he put up 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns. He's a big body guy, 6'1", 221. He had I have a RAS listed of 9.89.
Okay, Raz.football has it as 9.9 even.
Okay, yeah, so call it 9.9. That's amazing. He's a big body guy. I love him. And the thing too that I was reading about, he's a Senior Bowl kid. Packers for some reason love guys, wide receivers out of the Senior Bowl. So I think yeah. He's a guy that to me screams like, if we're looking at what we want out of the wide receiver group in the draft class here, if you can't get, or if the draft doesn't fall where you can't get one of these top 6-7 players, like a guy that's going to be the big vertical threat, like a Xavier Worthy or Adonai Mitchell, like someone like that. He's Xavier Leggett to me screams a guy that's like, put him on there and if he can beat out a Dontavian Wicks for the number 4 spot or something and gets, let's call it like 20, 25 receptions like over the season and just learn and develop under this burgeoning big wide receiver group, he has an opportunity to be like a diamond in the rough kind of player, just athletic wise,
Yeah, and looking at just his testing stuff, I mean, you've got 3 things that he tested in that are just in the good range. The rest of them are all in great to elite range. So, I mean, obviously the 6'1" has him in good range, but the 221 weight, 24 reps on the bench, his vert was a 40, his broad was a 10.6, 4.39 40. That's nuts. If he can come in and produce, great. South Carolina, and I know this is helmet scouting, but South Carolina has this reputation of. Oop, am I bumping?
I'm here. I can hear you.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
All right. Sorry, folks. We're having all kinds of technical difficulties going on.
We're going to blame Mike.
Yeah. It's all Mike's fault. Leave me on my own, all alone. Kind of helmet scouting. South Carolina produces a lot of good talent while they're in school, but there's some reason they don't match over into the NFL. Again, it's helmet scouting. It is what it is, but kind of like I've said and I've given you kind of a hard time with the Ohio State quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Until you get one that shows you. And now CJ Stroud has really stepped up. So maybe that's the one that breaks it. So maybe Leggett will be the guy that breaks that stigma for him. So, athletic-wise, great. Production-wise, we'll see what happens when he gets drafted and see what goes on with that. Who do I want to talk about now? Let's see. You know what? I've got 2 guys that probably fit a similar type. I'm gonna go ahead and throw one out there because I like how he is. And as soon as I pull up his res, I should have had all this stuff figured out before, but
you mean Mike should have had all this pulled
yeah,
up?
Mike should have had it figured out while I got to sit down and watch WrestleMania, damn it. But anyway, it's Luke McCaffrey out of Rice. Obviously he's got the pedigree there. He's Ed McCaffrey's kid. He's Christian's brother. He's Max's brother, all that stuff. But what I like about him is he's a convert. He started out at Nebraska as a quarterback, and he was recruited as a quarterback, and then he made the transition to wide receiver, transferred to Rice. He's got a high RAS score. He's according to RAS.football, it's a 9.44. He's got about average size for a wide receiver, 6'1", 198. His speed looks pretty good. According to this, his 40 is a 4.46, and you can see it on the field. I thought he had solid routes for being at Rice. I mean, Rice obviously isn't a power school, so they're not going to produce a ton of people. But for what he was asked for, he ran them fairly well. He looked like he could get a little quicker out of his brakes. It looked like he was a little slow when he was making the turn on some of his routes. Of course, he's got the occasional concentration drop, but it looked like he had good running vision. He was able to weave through the junk. I really liked what I saw out of him. Again, his RAS is high. Smaller school guy. He's probably going to go day 3.
Mm-hmm.
But, and I'm going to offend a lot of people here. If he was if he was at Wisconsin and he had the Watt last name, Badger fans would be all over this guy.
I think you're spot on, Joe.
But, and I think a lot of people are going to make the mistake to look at him as just another McCaffrey. And I
Right.
don't think you can do that because it is a different position than what Christian plays. Obviously he's going to have a lot of input from his dad because his dad was a wide receiver in the league for the long time. And of course, his older brother Max played for the Green Bay Packers for just a couple of, I think he spent a training camp and then he was on the practice squad for a year. But, there's obvious talent there. There's obvious ability there. Again, we're not looking for the next number one at this time unless it happens to fall into our laps. So this is another guy that could come in and maybe do better than your bottom, do like Dontavian Wicks did last year. Came in as a 5th round pick and really outdid what everybody else on the roster kind of did.
Exactly. And I think when you start talking about guys here in the day 3 kind of stuff, you're more willing to take flyers on something like he's a McCaffrey. Like, let's just see.
Yeah.
Let's see if the bloodline is is as strong as it's been. I mean, look at how many guys in the NFL, brothers, sons, like I was of the opinion when he first got drafted, I was like, there's no way TJ Watt is going to be JJ Watt. Like, it just does, like, it doesn't work like that, guys. And I said that as an Ohio State fan, just having watched Nick and Joey Bosa do exactly what TJ and JJ Watt were about to do on a smaller scale in the NFL, of course. But I'm not, if he was available on a day 3 pick, I'm not going to make that same mistake of underestimating him just because, calling him like Christian Watson's brother or something,
McCaffrey.
Oh, yeah, McCaffrey, sorry. Yeah.
No, Christian Watson's brother plays in the XFL or UFL.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, he's a guy that I would be very, very happy to just take a day 3 flyer and say, let's roll the dice and see if we can find, we can find a little bit of the McCaffrey magic. And he turns into something.
And I think he has some return ability too, so that that's another thing that you could do for him is bring him in as because you
exactly
obviously
right.
Your number one kick returner is going to be Keyshawn Nixon. That's obvious. I mean, they didn't pay him all that money for nothing. He's going to be a slot corner. He's going to be the kick returner. But when it comes to punt returner, they were throwing Jaden Reed out there. Well, if Jaden Reed's looking like our number one receiver, you're not going to want him to continue to take punts back there. So if you can get a guy that can fill in that role and still produce back there, why the hell not?
And I have been on the record saying this too. And this is not a dig at Keyshawn Nixon. I love Nixon. And I think he's been a huge breath of fresh air on the special teams side, if nothing else. However, the game is changing on special teams. Kickoffs are changing. And I'm not saying that Keyshawn Nixon cannot transition and be as productive in this new kickoff setting. But this isn't go straight forward and find a seam and you're off anymore for kickoffs. This is definitely a little bit more of a running back style of play. Like you have to read where your blocks are going. You have to read it more as a running back going through an offensive line rather than, like I said, like you find the seam and break it open. And so, like, when I was I helped out the Pack a Day podcast doing theirs, and I picked out Coleman Benson, Trey Benson from Florida State as a second round pick. And my thought was, even if he can't go out and break into the starting lineup as a running back, he could be a guy that has that backfield sort of vision a little bit more. And you're exactly right. Like, it doesn't hurt you to go find somebody else that can either, at the very least, return punts, take that off of Jaden Reed, or like maybe things don't work out with Keyshawn Nixon in this new style of kickoff, and you need to find a more kind of like shifty running back style, and yeah, he could easily fit that profile.
And it helps you in the long run that if, God forbid or Allah forbid or whatever your deity of choice is, um,
Buddha,
something happens to Keyshawn, then
right?
you're not scrambling to say, oh, okay, we got to throw this guy back there.
It's the
Who's
flexibility. You don't have to throw Jaden Reed out there,
right.
right?
So,
Yep.
and who knows? I honestly don't know what Rice's pro day, or if they're working on a pro day or whatever. Same kind of thing with Marvin Harrison Jr. There's no Raz for him right now, so I
Right.
don't know if they haven't done their pro day yet, or
I don't
they
think
just haven't.
he didn't participate in his pro day.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's hard, and I keep saying this every week. I know we're all stuck on Raz, and Goody has said before that's not his thing, whatever. But it's kind of odd that they keep drafting all these guys that have high Raz scores
Uh-huh.
every year. So there must be something to what they used to evaluate compared to what the Raz score is. Or I
Right.
shouldn't even say Raz score, because that's a double. It's Raz number. So that's why I look, and like I told Jacob and Joey last week, how I usually look at guys when I'm scouting is I go over and I look at the Raz score and I say, okay, this is a high Raz, this is high Raz, this is high Raz. I'm going to watch this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy.
Yep.
Every once in a while, I'll look at somebody who's not necessarily a high Raz, because you still got to look at guys that are later in the, that's going to fall. Or, even Jade Reed didn't have an elite Raz
Yeah.
number.
Right. Right.
And that's only because of his size. So, you got to go from there. So I just did McCaffrey. What's your next guy?
My next wide receiver. I mean, so I'll throw this out because I think that it's more of a I fell in love with him at the combine, and it's Xavier Worthy. The guy
Okay.
wins the combine. It's more of like the Al Davis style pick of, guy is super fast, very athletic. I want him catching balls for me. No, if I have to go pick somebody that's more in the idea of like, this is a guy I think fits what the Packers are probably looking for in a wide receiver at the position that they're probably likely to take a wide receiver at, which is, like we said, like earliest maybe round 2, but probably like late round 3 or day 3. And we talked about his buddy already down in Georgia, and it's Lad McConkey.
Yeah.
Um,
He's
it
my
just
number one name and on my name roster.
Oh yeah, but if you're drafting names, Lad McConkey is right up there. I love that. I love his name. He's definitely a little bit smaller, but like, he to me feels like a guy that um yet like again, size is not super great, but because his size isn't great, he's learned to make up for it with his skill set.
Yeah.
And he feels like a he feels like more of that Dobbs Wicks kind of role. Like, he's not going to beat anybody athletically, but if you put him into the right spot, he's going to be where you need him to be. Like, he always just seems to be at the right spot. He's always going to follow exactly. So he's a security blanket, you know. And yeah, to me, he just again feels like maybe I'm falling into the same thing that you were kind of mentioning with McCaffrey, where if Lad McConkey was from Wisconsin, like we'd all be over him because he's an undersized white wide receiver that just goes out lunch pail kind of guy. Um,
Yeah.
but like I don't know, I love wide receivers like that where the wide receiver position is like we mentioned, it's so saturated with super high athletic guys where if you find a guy that is able to compete on the same level as those guys without the raw athleticism, to me it says this guy is a football player. He's here to just play football. He's not coming out here because he's faster than everybody and he knows it. He's a guy that will put in the work and will be a reliable, even if he's not a wide receiver, he will come out and he will do whatever you ask him to do, technically sound, be, like I said, the right place, the right time. And so he's a guy that I really also enjoyed watching too. And maybe it was because he was next to Brock Bowers and I was falling in love with Brock Bowers, but Lad McConkey is a fun wide receiver to watch for me.
He was, and I did watch some of him. And really size wise, he's at average height. He's just a shade under 6 foot. It's his weight that really struggles with. He's only at 186. But, and I'm going to use a word that I was using a lot last week with a lot of the corners that we were talking about with Westendorf and Joey. He had dog in him, and that's
Yes.
DAWG, not DOG, DAWG. Because I even have wrote down there that he's a decent blocker. For his size, he was laying a hell of a block on some of these guys, and he wasn't afraid to punch them. So, I mean, he's got that ability to him. He's got that fight to him. You know, if you really want to compare him, well, you can't really compare him because honestly, he's a little bit, according to his RAS and his testing, he's a better Jaden Reed. You know, he's got a better 40 out of him. He's got a better 20, 10, shuttle, cone, vert, broad. He's got better than Jaden Reed out of him. So I'm all for it. I think this would be the guy that, and this was the one that I was talking about earlier with McCaffrey that I was like, okay, do I want to bring up this one? Do I want to bring up that one? Because they're similar in ways. McCaffrey's got a little bit more size to him, but they play similar. They do a lot of the similar things. And they're both athletic as hell. So, I mean, you can't go wrong with that. But the one that I'm going to bring up now is going to fit the mold of Lad. It's going to fit the mold of Jaden Reed. And I was just watching some of him today. So I'm not a firm grasp on him because I was just really quick trying to jam as much info in with him. And that's Jamari Thrash out of Louisville. And his issue is he's got a similar RAS as Jaden Reed. So while it's not elite because he's got a smaller size to him.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you start looking at some of the other scores that he did, he's got similar as what Jaden did. And then when you put on the tape, he plays similar to how Jaden Reed plays. Routes look good, fights for yards, weaves through traffic. He does have some drop issues, but I'm not sure if it's because of quarterback play. I was really getting, me just watching year-old tape was getting frustrated with the quarterback. I could understand if he was getting frustrated with the quarterback because it got to be looking like old school Brett Favre, where he would just close off half the field and only focus in on like 3 wide receivers, where Jamari was lined up over here, the quarterback was only watching over here, and it got him in trouble a lot of times. But, you know, like I said, I don't know if I would want to take another Jaden Reed because we've got one on the team, and you can't really build your wide receiver room out of nothing but pure Jaden Reed, 5'10", 5'11", 190-pound wide receivers. You've
Right.
got to have a mixture there. But between between McCaffrey and Thrash, I would take one of them. I'd take one of them in a heartbeat.
Yeah. No, I think exactly right, because I think it's again, I think if you were asking me right now on this team, if I gave you the option of, let's say Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs aside, veterans locks. If you say your next guys are Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks, or it's Jaden Reed and Jaden Reed light, I'll take Jaden Reed light.
Yeah,
You know,
most likely.
because, and not to say that there's no place for Wicks or anything, but like if you could give me somebody in that realm of Jaden Reed more than a Dontavian Wicks, I lean more towards Jaden Reed. You know?
I think Jaden has more of the wow factor to him than what Dontavian does. Dontavian obviously is going to be your route runner, and he's going to
Right.
get open more that way. So yeah, if you're going to want more of the wow factor, you're going to take multiple Jaden Reeds and maybe have a Dontavian on the side to do
Yeah.
the blue collar work as it
The
was
dirty
called.
work, right? Exactly. The
Yeah.
3-4 yard catch for the first down that you absolutely have to have.
So, but yeah, all right, Dan. You got anybody else you want to talk about?
I think the only other one that I had on my list that I'd really like to bring up, and again, it's a little bit more of the same of what we've already been talking about, um, is Javon Baker, um, out of Central Florida,
Okay.
um, and it's funny that we're kind of like putting this up against what might have sounded like a slam against Dontavian Wicks, because uh Baker feels a little bit more in that Dontavian Wicks kind of role. But um again, like I'm not saying I don't want a Dontavian Wicks on my team. I just, if you know, I think I've made my point on that. He fits all the size thresholds. He just has he's a guy that played at smaller school. Stats kind of get overlooked. You wonder how it translates. He's a guy that just has a ton of potential, and I think if we want to talk about it in terms of that, he fits that Dontavian Wicks mold of excels at a smaller school. Does it translate into the NFL? Yes or no? Dontavian Wicks, it was yes. He kind of fits that same mold of the athletic ability is there, the production is there. How much of that was because it was a small school, or the competition? Can he do it here? Give him a chance. Let's see what he can do. So Javon Baker was the only other guy I kind of had on my list.
Yeah, and I couldn't tell you much about him. I would probably defer to Sarah Kelleher on anything to do with
Sure.
UCF. So if she says he's good, I'll be good with it.
Yeah, yeah. Hit us up, Sarah. Let us know.
Unfortunately, she only does one show for draft stuff, and we've
Yeah.
already had that show early on in in our draft preview. So I can't bug her anymore about draft stuff. But yeah, I completely feel you. And like we said earlier, this draft is going to be so deep with wide receivers. You could pluck one from anywhere in any round, and they're probably going to produce for you at some point.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a couple others to talk about, but one of them is not really great things to talk about. And as much as I like controversy, I'm not, and that's Adonai Mitchell out of Texas, who you kind of mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Uh, obviously he has the athleticism, but
Yeah.
it doesn't show on the field as much. And the one thing that I said about him and I don't know if I'm using the term right. I just remember it was mentioned about Jordy Nelson when he was going through the draft process. He was a long strider. He had
Yeah.
tremendous speed, but he was a long strider, and it looked like he was going slower than what it was. If he could cut back on his strides, his speed would go through amazingly. But other than that, then there's like Ricky Pearsall, who I thought was better last year than he was this year in a lot of the stuff that I watched. But you know, we're I think we're pretty good on the wide receivers. Are there anybody? Well, and then there's Brian Thomas out of LSU. But like I said earlier, there's three schools you look for wide receivers from the last few
Right.
years: Alabama, Ohio State, and LSU. But since this is a slash episode and we haven't talked about any, are there any tight ends that you would like to bring up?
I mean, I think I have to bring up Cade Stover because I think as the resident, I might be the only Ohio State Packer fan on Twitter that I know. There might be one other one that hangs around, but I'm very much hated on Saturdays, more so than most other days, by the Packer community on social media. And so I'm probably most familiar with Cade Stover than anybody else. And so as a Packer Buckeye, I'm putting this out there to Brian Gutekunst. If Cade Stover is available at any point in the draft, take his name off of your board and put it into the garbage can. Because Cade Stover is not an NFL tight end. And look, I loved him playing for Ohio State. He's the prototypical guy from there. There is a proud tradition at Ohio State of not just choking in big games, but also finding predominantly white football players that played one position and turning them into some kind of weapon at a different one.
Yeah, he was a defensive end, wasn't he?
He was a defensive end for most of his career, and then he switches over to tight end. And he did pretty good from a college standpoint. He did all right, but like he's not a run blocker at all. And I think his athleticism, it fits more of like a flag football, like backyard football kind of style. You know what I mean? Like, and I know that sounds bad, but like he doesn't play football like you need someone to play football in the NFL. You know, like you need somebody that is doing things right. He kind of goes out and when he makes plays, it's a little bit more, it feels like a little bit more backyardy kind of football. Like, oh, we ran Marvin Harrison Jr. up and turn at the car and go that way. And like, oh, Cade Stover showed up in the middle. He's just not a polished football player. Football, I don't even think was his first sport coming out of college. Like, I think he was a basketball star more than he was a football guy. Yeah, he's just not he could very easily be like a grinded out special teams guy if you want to throw him out there. I don't know how he translates into that, but like you can't have him play tight end if you're a serious football team. He fits more of a UFL type tight end profile.
You know, the funny thing about it though is he's got a 8.22 RAS.
I know.
And
I know. Everything screams he should be an NFL tight end. I'm promising you he's not.
Okay. So I'm going to throw a name out there, and I don't know if you remember him or not. So you got to tell me, though, if you remember him, is he better or worse than Jake Stoneburner? Okay.
Oh, gosh. No, I definitely remember. I definitely remember him. Oh, shoot, I'm trying to like really think back to what I think Jake. They're pretty close, but I think Jake seemed to play, if I'm kind of remembering right, Jake seemed to play a little bit more like as a real tight end.
Jake was more of the wide receiver. He was more of a bigger wide
Yeah.
receiver.
Yeah, like Cade Stover just like a he doesn't really fit into one. Like he's not a blocking tight end, and he's not like really a big threat in the passing game. Like he doesn't do anything kind of like excelling. And so yeah, like Jake fit more of that pure wide receiver kind of tight end. Um so yeah, I think if you put them up against each other, you probably go him. It's just I'm sorry, Cade. I don't mean this like in a bad like I loved watching you at Ohio State. He always seemed to be, in a position to make a play whenever he was called upon. He was pretty reliable, like he doesn't miss a lot. But I think a little bit more of that was he's like the third option after Malik Harrison, Jesus. Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Ibuka, and everyone kind of focuses on that, and you kind of forget about forget about Kate Stover.
Well, and here's to throw salt on the wound. His RAS score or his RAS number as a defensive end is better than what it is as a tight end. So he was an
That doesn't surprise me.
8.22 as a tight end. He's an
Eh.
8.62 as a defensive end. So, now I'll just kind of piggyback on that because I know a lot of people ask me about Eric All, and I'm going to give everybody the same answer that I give everything else. I don't know. Eric All
Mhm.
spent maybe a season with the Hawkeyes, and it was a partial season because he ended up tearing his ACL. So he
Yeah.
spent more time in Michigan than he did at Iowa. He did seem like more of a blocking tight end than the receiving type. But then again, we had Cade McNamara, but Iowa's offense was just shit. So even if he had the ability, it wasn't going to be shown because we didn't have anybody calling the plays worth a damn for the Hawkeyes to put a spotlight on Eric All, which kind of makes me surprised that he decided to come out this year instead of taking that extra year and going back like Cade did. But uh so yeah, I did look at some tight ends. They're not appealing per se because it is kind of a weak draft
Yeah.
for tight ends. Uh, to go on your South Carolina one, wide receiver, they did have Trey Knox. It's got a high RAS. They used him as an H back, but my note on him is he's not an H back. He was missing blocks. He was, you know, but he could catch and he was athletic. Um,
Yeah.
uh,
I will
then
say
there.
one guy that I really fell in love with watching stuff and doing some research
Can I
into the
take a
tight end group.
guess? Can I take a
Go
guess
for
who
it.
it is?
Go for it.
Ben Sinnott from Kansas State.
No, actually,
Oh,
no, it was,
damn.
but I do, no, I do like him as a guy. I A guy that's a little bit more like I'm talking like down down the board. Like this is a day like guy like you take him and you hope he turns like diamond in the rough kind of guy is Tip Riemann
Raymond. Yeah, Raymond out of
from Illinois.
yeah.
RAS score off the chart for a tight end like him. He should not have the athletic ability that he does, and he like I said, like when I looked at the tight end group, and I'm like, what would I want to add to a tight end group that has Musgrave and Kraft? I want more of that Josiah DeGuara type, that H back sort of type, and
Right.
to me, that's what he kind of feels. It's like if you're gonna find somebody to play that H back role, find somebody that has the athleticism to do it at a higher level. And he seems like one of the better blocking tight ends in the group, and so that I like him a lot.
Yeah, and I watched a little bit of him and I thought he was pretty good, but I just figure with the way this tight end class is going to fall that you'd have to reach for him to take him if you really him, and
Yep, yep.
it's going to be hard. So unless somebody falls that the Packers are just absolutely in love with, I think we're going to be stuck with Tyler friggin' Davis and any UDFA's that they decide to uh sign.
Yeah.
The only other one, like, there is Ben Sinnott or Sinnott or however they pronounce his name. He
Yeah.
looked amazing, but I think he's going to be probably tight end 2 behind Bauer out of Georgia.
Yep.
But I did like Theo Johnson out of Penn State. He's got tremendous size. Over the moon for Washington out of Georgia last year. This guy is just huge. And I'm trying to grab his he had a 993 RAS. So this guy's athletic score is just amazing. But he's 6'6", 259. And he ran a 4.57 40.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean
love
this
that.
guy, oh, you talk about your mouth is watering with Bauer with Kraft and Musgrave. This guy would be amazing because who's going to block him?
Right. Right.
I mean, obviously, I watched some of them and I didn't see some of the things that I wish I could have saw out of him, like being, the dog pile on him and he's still pushing the pile. But, I didn't get to see that too much in the little bit that I did watch him, but 6'6", 259, and he ran a 4.57. That's not human.
Not as a tight end. No, that's
So now the one thing that kind of is weak, and I don't know how you can how this compares because some people just cannot bench for shit. He only put up 19 reps as a on the bench. So it did knock his score down on that just a little bit, but man, that would just be. I called Washington last year. I said he looked like he was Sasquatch out there running down the field. This guy really would be Sasquatch running down the field.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree with you on the bench thing too. It's like I want a guy, like I said, if I'm looking for a guy for HVAC role, I want he needs to be running with blocking with speed. Like that's what I'm looking for. Is I'm not looking for he's not a Mercedes Lewis that's going to line up on a
Right?
line and
Yeah,
block.
yeah.
To put him out there as a lead guy on like a sweep or a motion or something like that. Get him in space and then at that point bench press goes out the window.
Could you imagine 6'6", 259 as an H-back? That's not even fair.
It should be illegal. Like
what? I mean, jeez, man, that's like a Madden create a player.
I mean, 6'6", 259. Let me hold on. Let me just Google. Let me just Google something really quick. Okay, 6'6", 259 is okay. Sorry, I'm trying to do this on the fly. Okay, 6'6", 259. For comparison, DJ Burns, the guy for NC State that took the world by storm in the March Madness tournament this past year, is 6'9", 275. Like it's you're not too far off from getting to a guy that could possibly be like he should be a power forward. Like he should be playing basketball for Penn State, not tight end.
Well, and here's the thing. I don't know. I didn't do any background search on him. He could be a convert from basketball just based on his athletic skill.
Yeah.
Theo Johnson.
I'm looking it up right now. I didn't know this. He's Canadian. That's fun to learn.
Then he probably is Sasquatch.
Had no other brother that played basketball. I cannot imagine he doesn't have basketball in his past at some point.
Well, let's look at the NFL.com profile because sometimes they put that stuff in there.
Yeah.
The frame.
It's riveting podcasting, by the way, listening to
Yeah,
us
I know,
scroll
isn't
through.
it? No, they don't have it listed, so maybe he's not. But I know, like Mike Gesicki was a volleyball player before going into basketball, or
Mhm.
I mean, going into football. So it would not be outside the realm of Penn State looking at other sports to get a player for their team.
Well, look at what they did with
But
Kate Stover. He was a basketball guy, and they molded him into the perfect tight end.
yeah, yeah, God, I just I can't get over, and that was the lead note in my write up on him was unbelievable size.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then obviously, like just to go out with a lot of the other ones, that he's got the ability to uh pass block or to block. He just needs to work on technique, but he's still probably trying to get used to being 6 and 259 pounds.
Right.
So and he's got great ability to for the contested catch and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
well, Dan, we've almost been here on for an hour and a half. So are there any last minute things that you want to put out there for this group and anything draft wise for the Green Bay Packers? This is your final say for OPE.
Yeah, I think when it comes to these two groups, if I see the Packers take anybody from this group, from either group, I'm going to be very, very interested. Um, because if they take anyone from either of these groups, to me, it instantly says they see something that they really, really like. Whether it's an athletic profile, whether it's fits a specialty need, or he's a guy that fell down their board and they had to have him. If a wide receiver, especially if a tight end comes off the board, with everything that we just talked about here, but if either one comes off the board, to me it says they have a guy that they really like and they are excited about him, and that makes me excited because like any other position, a tackle, any offensive line, safety, cornerback, it's like, okay, they need these positions. We understand, like, okay, this is they found a guy that they want to have immediately playing in a role in 2-3 years. Anyone from these two groups says this could be a fun project. There could be something fun going on here. So if anyone comes off the board from these groups, I'm instantly intrigued.
And if the Packers take Cade Stover, you're going to get his jersey, right?
If they take Cade Stover, I plan on being at most of the draft because it is in Detroit. I'm just right down the road. If they take Cade Stover while I'm at the draft, I think I will jump in the Detroit River and swim to Canada and change my name, and you'll never hear from me again.
Well, Dan, I really appreciate you coming on. Obviously,
Heck
we
yeah.
didn't have Mike on here, so it was hard to really blame him for any other of our technical difficulties, but we were able to power
But we
through.
did it anyway.
I know you got a lot of stuff going on. Do you want to tell the people what you've got going on right now and tell them where they can find you?
Sure. Right now, the best place to find me is on the Pack a Day podcast. I'm doing the Friday episodes with Monty Moore and Camille Davis, and we are having an absolute blast over there on the Friday episodes. So make sure you can check us out over there. We're just now starting to like really dive into our draft stuff on the Pack a Day stuff. So make sure you're checking out all of us there. And then as the season gets closer to started. Obviously, Game On Wisconsin and Lombardi's Bar on Wednesdays, 8:30 Eastern. Right now is the tentative schedule. There's going to be changes probably coming to Lombardi's Bar, but it's still going to be a core of me and Jimmy Christensen running things. But there could be some fun stuff on the horizon that we change up and do some different things. So the best way, obviously, is just to follow me on social media at DK all the way on Twitter. anything new that pops up or gets started, you can find it over there.
Sounds great, and do give these guys a follow. Game On is a great place to go and hang out for a while and listen to these guys just have at each other. Unfortunately, Todd's not going to be there anymore, so you got a little less fighting
Yes,
going on. But
unfortunately. Oh shoot. Gosh dang it. How are we going to survive?
but like I said, Dan, it's always great to have you on. Look forward
always
to
great to be on.
talking to you more, and hopefully we'll get Kawano on here again. And he might be found somewhere. I might have to put up wanted posters or whatever to locate him or something. But you can find the show on any of your favorite podcast players, Spotify, Apple, probably some weird third-party one out of Asia that nobody's heard of yet. Or you can find us on the video version on YouTube. You can find the show at Ohana_Packers. You can find me at Iowa_Joe86. You can find Mike at Kawano Mike. You can please go to the website, ohanapackers.org. We've got you can find all the podcasts, all the videos. We've got articles up there for you. We've got some recipes up there for you. Hopefully we'll get some more things popping out on there. Also be sure to check out all the other things that are under the OPE network. The Mac and Cheese podcast, Ask a Cheesehead, all those other shows that are starting to pop up under OPE. We got a lot of fun things coming along, and you just got to buckle in and enjoy the ride while it goes. And please do leave us a like, subscribe, drop us a comment. If you want to argue about something, I always tell people this is an open challenge. If you feel like I've said something you don't like, you want to argue, just drop me a DM, and we'll schedule something to have a all out argument. Maybe not a fight. I'm getting too old to actually throw hands, but as Toby Keith said, I'm not as good as I
ain't as good as I once was, but I was good once as I've ever been.
There you go. So as Mike would say, go Pack go, and aloha.